Hi, I'm Prophet Natty. Thanks for listening to the Caribbean Cannabis Channel. Meditate with us every Monday as we seek to educate you on the latest developments and personal stories of those shaping the cannabis economy across the region. Now here's your program. Welcome to the first episode of the Caribbean Cannabis Channel. I am Prophet Natty, your friendly neighborhood Rastaman. Before we start, go grab your spliff, go grab your bong. Me have a cup of tea somewhere there, go grab it. I'll wait for you because I have to light my spliff as well. This episode is really meant to answer many questions I have been asked, such as why I got into cannabis, why is there a need to focus on the Caribbean, and many other questions basically geared towards my journey with cannabis and how we reach here today on the Caribbean Cannabis Channel. So I was like, why not? This is one of the best places to start. It will also allow you, the audience, to connect more with me, and in return I will feel a bit more connected with you. Honestly, I don't really know where to begin because my relationship with cannabis is close to about 10 years old. Actually, it will be 10 years old next year. So I think that is one of my longest standing relationships that I have had to date, and the relationship continues to grow. I guess one of the best places to start will actually be my first high. The first time I got high was a great but not so great experience. This was during my secondary school years. I was probably 14, 15. Yes, I was underage at this time. Yes, cannabis was illegal. However, that was then, today is now. We do not promote the use of underage cannabis unless authorized by a parent or a guardian. So now that we have that out of the way, let's go. So I remember it the first time, and to be honest with you, I was high out of my mind. But it was one of the most liberating experiences I have had. A couple of my brethren and sisters, if I could recall, got together after school, and my friend rolled up 2 fat roll-ons. If you do not know what a roll-on is, in Trinidad and Tobago, persons mainly roll their marijuana onto a cigarette. So we call it a roll-on. So my friend rolls up these 2 fat roll-ons of bubblegum kush, where they're smoking halfway through the first roll-on, and not really feeling anything. But by the end, I began tripping, no lie. Like, I began speaking things that I never spoke about before. I just felt like all doors just opened, and I don't know if it was the herb speaking or me, but I became a comedian because my friends couldn't catch themselves. They were only laughing every time I said something, and I remember saying some nonsense for real. Like, I remember saying at one point in time, Jack Warner is my father or my uncle or something like that. So yeah, so that was taking place. So there I am tripping. So I'm like, nah, let me pause. This thing started to hit a little too hard, and I really couldn't make. I also remember that I had to travel home, which was like approximately 40 minutes away at the time. And my friends, they were living a stone's throw away, so they could have indulged fully into the 2 roll-ons and then walked home. I had a different journey to take. So I said, let me pause here. I got my high. They still went ahead and sparked the second one. But for the culture, for the boys, for the team, I took 2 puffs of the second one and then I dipped. And this will actually be my first piece of advice to anybody who is probably thinking about trying cannabis for the first time, or you're trying cannabis in a more potent form, which is like an edible, a capsule. Start slow and steady. You ain't Snoop Dogg, you ain't Wiz Khalifa. Start slow and steady. From this point on, I continue to use herb mainly on a recreational level, and the relationship continued to grow. Natty and cannabis became synonymous. If you saw herb, you saw me. If you saw me, you saw the herb. That's just how it went. And so much so that during my secondary school years, I remember doing two out of my 3 school-based assessments, which is your SBAs or your IAs, on why cannabis should be legal. I guess you could say this was the start of where my cannabis advocacy began. And what these assignments really helped me realize was that there was little information about cannabis in the Caribbean. And even today, you need to do very thorough research, or you actually need to be in the cannabis space to find that information, which is pretty sad, because you can search up cannabis in North America, cannabis in Canada, cannabis in any other part of the world, and you find it way easier than you find about cannabis research in the Caribbean. And we are literally not so far apart from each other. So I always used to wonder why it was so difficult to get information on cannabis across the region. These findings then made me, or left me rather, with more questions than answers. So I continued to do my own research, and that tied into my own daily use of cannabis, which I was becoming more and more conscious of. And I remember one afternoon, I was smoking in my backyard, and the blunt started to speak to me. I think everyone who uses cannabis had that moment, like an epiphany, where the blunt was speaking to them. Quote unquote the blunt, not necessarily a blunt, but you know what I mean. So I'm there, and I started to think about purpose of life. What is the universe? You know, your typical high thoughts. But the typical high thoughts didn't just stop in that moment. It continued. It started a spiral of soul searching and conscious living, which I have cannabis to thank for. And I think this is a common theme with a lot of people, where once you are aware of self, you sort of become that authentic self through opening up through cannabis. You know, you feel as though the doors open where there's no longer a need to just subscribe to your day-to-day living that you once had before, or what is the status quo, you know? With this conscious living, I actually was able to cut out some upcoming addictions that I actually felt. Now, during my younger years, I actually indulged in cigarettes as well as alcohol drinking. And I'm not judging anyone. If you smoke cigarettes, you smoke your cigarettes. It's not the best thing for you, but if that's what you're doing, you go ahead. If you drink your alcohol, that's fine. Just don't overindulge in the alcohol. But my main thing was cutting out these things from my diet. And the only reason I believe I was able to do so was through the use of cannabis. Now, we'll probably go into one of the episodes where we'll get to find out how cannabis can actually treat with addictions. But that is a story for another day. Now, while my incorporating it into my diet now and becoming more conscious, I started to drink teas rather than just smoking. I started to make oils, my own edibles, these different things to allow me to begin to understand how cannabis can be used differently and not just in the typical manner that I usually knew it as, which was just smoking. Which, by the way, people, is not the best way to consume cannabis. So do find other ways to actually consume cannabis, and we will be touching on that in episodes to come. So do stay tuned. At this point where I became more conscious, I started to educate my peers about it. Those I had on social media, I went on to radio, TV, many different platforms where I was able to help push the message on the many ways that cannabis is actually useful for our, not just the economy on the business level, but also how it impacted the day-to-day lives of our citizens. Why the plant is not evil as people used to make it out to be, and really and truly why we needed legalized, you know? Now, I hope that you have been following along intently. Reason being, I would have just highlighted the many different ways that cannabis can actually impact your life. So I would have touched on how it helped me on a recreational level to become more social and vibrant with my friends. It allowed me to zero in on my mental state and realize that I wanted more out of understood more out of life, and it also helped me to dive more into spirituality and yourself, your inner self. And these are things that I credit cannabis for, as well as my other day-to-day things that I did. Now, how this really translates into creating a regional platform for cannabis? Well, for those that know me, I attended UWI, and if you didn't know, now you know. UWI is the #1 regional institution in the Caribbean. Well, university that is, in the Caribbean. And while I was there, I became a regionalist, and a strong desire to see greater collaborations amongst our countries was born. For some reason, though we are so close, it seems like we are so far apart, like geographically. Grenada is right next door to me, Jamaica is 2 hours away, St. Vincent is right there, but for some reason it's still so difficult to get information from each other. So the idea sort of sparked to fill this gap and provide a hub for our regional cannabis community to connect and to really share knowledge to better assist each other. Just as how has CSME, which is our regional market, is how I see, or rather envision, our cannabis market to become, or rather we allow cannabis to now penetrate or become part of CSME. So if you're a bartender in Jamaica and you want to relocate to St. Vincent, it should be easy for you to do so. If you are a cultivator in St. Vincent and you want to now go to Barbados or Trinidad to help that industry grow, you should be able to transfer yourself very easily from one nation to the next. So these are the ideas and the thoughts that I had while I was conceptualizing this, and thus was born the Caribbean Cannabis Channel, where we do regional integration through meditation. And this regional integration through meditation was actually a play on words called regional integration through penetration. And this was a slang at a saying at UWI rather, where this is how persons quote unquote connected with each other through penetration. And if you're wondering what penetration is, it's sex. Regional integration through penetration is sex. So currently we have Jamaica, Barbados, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, Belize, Bermuda and Trinidad and Tobago making steps toward cannabis legalization. Some have already decriminalized, some have a working medical industry, and some are focusing on research. Our mission is to educate you on what is happening in these markets as it relates to dispensaries, getting your foot into the cultivating business. We have budding youth who are making steps and bold moves in the cannabis industry across the region. And we'll also be touching on some of the advocacy groups and the groundwork that they are doing. We'll be touching on all of this, as well as bringing to you tips and strategies on becoming a more effective cannabis consumer or even cultivator. That's also something that you can look forward to. I hope by the end of this episode you feel a bit closer to your friendly neighborhood Rastaman. So, until next time, remember to stay meditated. Hi, give thanks for listening to another episode of the Caribbean Cannabis Channel. Be sure to like, share and follow to stay up to date with all the development and behind the scenes happening across the Caribbean cannabis community. Until next time, remember to meditate and educate.